Hey everyone, I wanted to make a video to tell you a little bit more about why I decided to embark on this new show your work journey over this summer. So if you caught my last video, you heard about this idea where I want to take you along with me on a journey as I write my next book. So from coming up with the concept of the book to developing the outline to beginning to write the chapters, all the way through creating a cover and getting it ready for publication, I'm going to be sharing every little, sometimes tedious part of the journey. And the reason I decided to do that is all because of this book. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with this one. It's called Show Your Work, 10 Ways to Share Your Creativity and Get Discovered. And it's by Austin Kleon. It's actually part of a trio of books he has. They're all about this length, about this size, really fun, visually creative books. And when I think back to all the books that have really shaped my thinking about my writing and also thinking about, who I am as an author, this is probably the number one book that has had the strongest impression on me. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit. I can show some of my notes later. My idea with this series is that anything I write, anything I put together, I'm going to share with you on my website. So this video is just kind of a little preview of that. But I wanted to talk about some of the key ideas that I picked up from this book and why I think they're useful. So the first thing, really the key thing that I think this book changed my thinking on has to do with the value of sharing your process. So I don't know if you can think of any authors, artists, fashion designers, content creators who you follow who do a really good job of taking you behind the scenes. They basically show you how the sausage is made, for lack of a less gross analogy. But, these are people who take you into their world and show you the process that they use to create things. I personally love this, but what I was finding was in my own creative life, all that I was really doing on my social media was saying, oh, here's a book. I have a book you can buy. Have you heard about this book? Here's a book you can buy. I don't have that many books, but that was kind of the heart of the way that I was approaching marketing and kind of creating community around my work, which was just buy the thing. Here's why you should buy the thing. So part of the goal of this book is to help give value or help you understand the value of the process. That actually it's the process and not the product that is what's going to help create community and excitement around your work. This really kind of shifts the whole conversation around you and your products to be less about, I have a thing to sell, and more about, here's what it's like to be a person working in this area and creating this kind of content. The other thing that Austin Kleon talks about in the book, he talks about, a couple of things. First, this perspective allows you to be an amateur, and it sort of gives you permission to be working on drafts and to change your mind and to try out techniques without the pressure of the finished product. Part of my own experience and what I can say personally is that, you learn how you work by doing the work. And you can't learn that until you start digging in and you start thinking about, what is my process like? What does help my productivity? When do I feel most creative? What are some of the myths that I tell myself about what needs to happen before I can possibly start working on the project of my heart? He describes the process of thinking about yourself as a documentarian of your own work. And I love that perspective. So, thinking about, okay, what are the notes you take? What are the sketches, the drafts? How does your product change, from the original conception to the final product? And this allows you to offer something unique to your market, to your creative community, and especially to other aspiring artists who may be working in your area. The other thing he talks about too is, it's not just about showing your work. Once you've built a platform and once you've kind of created a community around showing your work, which I'm hoping this series will do for me, it's also about paying it forward. It's about sharing what you know, sharing what you've learned, and helping others who maybe are not quite as far along in the process come right along behind you and have their own success and create their own community. You do this through transforming your digital connections into personal connections, and trying to actually create community around the things that you're learning as you're going. The final point I want to bring up, it's a little bit of an aside, but he talks, Austin Kleon talks in this book about, being thoughtful about whose feedback you take seriously. And I think that's something that I've definitely struggled with, because there is a vulnerability to showing your work, whether that's the finished product or whether that's, draft 1 6 months earlier. You put yourself out there, you put a piece of yourself, a piece of your creativity out into the world. And we all know how the internet can be sometimes. We've seen those comment threads. So there is a vulnerability, and there will be people who will comment on your work and your ideas in ways that don't exactly energize you. So there's a nice section in the book too that kind of addresses that it's not without any kind of risk to put yourself out there, to show your work, to show yourself as an amateur who's partway through a really up and down process, but that there can be really great benefits to doing just that. So, his own story basically demonstrates how this principle works. His other books, fall into line with these sorts of ideas, in terms of ways that you can interact with other people's content and how to manage productivity and inspiration in your own creative life. So anyway, it's this book's fault that I'm putting my face on these videos out on the internet. It's what I think Austin would want me to do if he was my life coach or my creative coach. And it's a little bit scary, but it's also kind of exciting. So I hope that this process is helpful to someone out there. And honestly, I think even if it's not just going through the motions, and showing my work for myself is going to prove quite beneficial.